Welcome to AlexGs Aquarium, everybody. Today I want to give a little bit of an update on the 1600-gallon system. Specifically, I want to talk about the latest update on where the algae is at in the 1600-gallon system. If you're not familiar, I've been battling some algae in the 1600-gallon system since I added my reef lighting back in December, and I've been really getting a better hold on it every week. The algae in the 480-gallon tank has been going away a little bit more each week. You can see most of the branching rock now is pretty free and clear of major algae growth. There's still a bit more on this side of the tank, but it's slowly going away in this tank. Now, initially, I didn't have algae growth in the 720-gallon tank, but the algae has kind of migrated out of this tank and into the 720. That being said, the algae in the 150-gallon refuge has been growing as well, but not nearly at the rate it's been growing in the 720-gallon tank. And this has kind of led me to start going, how am I exporting my nutrients through algae? Is the refuge doing the job that I intended it to? And in my initial PAR readings video, I discovered that, I have pretty good PAR readings in the 480-gallon reef tank, but I want to increase that PAR level in this tank. The 720-gallon tank has fairly low PAR readings, and the 150-gallon refuge tank also has some really low PAR readings in it. And it's got me really thinking that the light intensity in the 150-gallon refuge is just not enough to keep up with the amount of photosynthesis required to grow the algae I need and export it in that tank, as opposed to allowing it to grow in this tank and making it a medium for nutrient export through algae. And I thought about how I could change this. I thought about maybe getting one of the Kessel grow lights that they have, or even just a planted tank light that's more of a white light balance. And I ultimately decided to go with a UFO light off of Amazon. It's a 270 watt model. It's mostly red LEDs with some blue and a few green mixed in. It's got its own fan for cooling, and it came with its own little mounting kit. I went ahead and I replaced one of my LED floodlights out of the 150-gallon refuge tank last night. This is the one where about half the matrix on the LEDs here had burned out and wasn't operable. Knowing that light was already not as effective, I decided to replace that one first. And I want to keep some white lighting over the refuge tank because I want to be able to film the mantis shrimp and its feeding behaviors, as well as just observe the tank in a nice white light from time to time. And when you look at the 150-gallon refuge tank, about half of that tank actually has rock in it and macroalgae growing. The other half of the tank is kind of hidden behind a stand, and the other piece that's there is basically just 30 inches of vertical water, which is mostly what was being covered by this light. I decided that I'll take this UFO grow light, do some initial PAR readings, which I did, and I was getting about 340 PAR just under the surface of the water with the immersion settings turned on for my Apogee SQ520. And if I take immersion settings off and just let it take a full PAR value outside of the water, it's well beyond 400 into the 1000 range easily as you get a little closer to the light. But with that being said, I want to have the maximum amount of PAR that I can. As close to that light is where I want to grow algae. But considering the tank is 30 inches deep, I needed to have a way to actually provide a surface area for algae to grow. Decided to kind of take the idea of an algae scrubber and just make it submerged in that 150-gallon refuge tank. Now, in the 150-gallon refuge tank, the water turnover rate's about 1,200 gallons per hour is what that overflow is rated for. So a little over every hour, most of the water in the 1,600-gallon system goes through there. There's good water flow. And if I provide a good surface area and medium for the algae to grow and keep it closer to the light, I should be able to start growing a lot larger quantity of algae in that tank. I decided to get similar material to what's in algae scrubbers. It's kind of like a crocheting plastic, and this is what's going to be used for my in Refugium algae scrubber. First thing I did to this is take some 40 grit sandpaper and I sanded down both sides lightly with this just to rough it up a little bit. Once I had that all completed, I then went ahead and rinsed it off. Now the purpose of sanding is simple. It just provides a more rough surface that is a little easier for algae to attach. And that was going to be the main medium I wanted to grow the algae on. Once I had that completed, the next step I took was to make some kind of frame or holder for this material in the 150-gallon refuge tank. Initially, I started off by trying to build kind of a half-inch PVC frame that would kind of hold like vertical sheets of this. I made one kind of holder, and in doing that, I really didn't like the way the design was going. It had about 2 inches of this sticking out of the water, which was kind of taken away from the medium that I wanted, and I was going to put in several of them that would be removable so that I could easily clean them, but I ended up changing the design so that it would sit lower into the tank, and that allowed me to have more surface area on this to grow algae. But as I started to test it once it was assembled, these sheets are kind of buoyant, and even weighted down with a little piece of PVC, they kind of tended to sway in the current, and I wanted something that would be a little bit more steady. I went ahead, completed the whole cage design, and once I started really thinking about it, I decided, well, I could keep one kind of vertical holder in it, but why don't I just take this material and kind of zip tie it to the back, the sides, and the bottom, all being in a close proximity to the grow light, which will give me a good surface area to grow algae. At the same time, it'll still be relatively easy to clean. When I got my frame completed, I also did drill a few holes into the PVC, and I didn't do much in the way of measurements. I did this kind of on the fly and really rough. It's a simple little frame that'll hold this stuff up. And once I went ahead and kind of attached all these pieces of this nylon material, I also took the utility knife and made some cuts in it so that I could kind of expand it open. I pulled out some red macroalgae, brown macroalgae, and even the little tiny bit of chaetomorpha that I still have left. I managed to find a few tiny pieces, and I went ahead and put them into this material right under the light. I want to see if I can't kickstart the chaeto in this tank again. It really started off strong, but kind of quickly died off and really didn't do a whole lot. And I'm hoping that I could kind of bring it back. And that's the whole point of what I'm doing with this little in-tank algae scrubber. I want to be able to start exporting more nutrients through that tank, which I'm hoping will start to lower the algae growth in these tanks and allow the cleanup crew to slowly start making more and more headway until the algae is finally out of these tanks and limited to that tank. And I might not stop where I'm at now. I've got one of these. I want to see how effective it is. I have another whole third of the 150-gallon refuge tank that is not utilizing anything right now for a grow light. So if this starts to work and I'm not seeing the exact results I want with algae going away in the displays, I'm going to add another one potentially if the algae will continue to grow there. I'm really looking forward to kind of giving updates on this and kind of show how it goes. It's a little bit different take on kind of an algae scrubber and something in a refuge. It's not a huge innovation by any means, but it's a cool little idea that I thought might work out good once it has been up and running for a few weeks to see what kind of algae growth I'm actually getting. That's what I wanted to cover in today's video. Of course, if you have any comments or questions on what I'm doing with that grow light and my little in-tank algae scrubber inside the Refugium, please leave them down below. If you want to see more on the 1600-gallon system, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and I will see you on the next video.